Looks like the board's all here.
And it is 6 o'clock on all clocks, so you can go ahead and call the meeting to order whenever.
Yes, it's a long meeting tonight, so let's get started. This is the Project Review Board meeting for Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. Almost said 2020. And if I'm looking to my side, it's because I have a separate monitor here that has the agenda, so I'm going to be going back and forth just so everybody knows. We do have two new members of the Project Review Board who are with us tonight. So Linda and Alexis, if you would each like to just quickly introduce yourselves, that would be great. And Linda, we can start with you.
Okay, I am happy to be part of the board and hope to contribute something as you go forward. I have a background in being on commissions in the prior two towns that I lived in Connecticut for a good amount of years, past more than 20, wetlands and conservation commissions. So I have an idea of process, but process in Maine is different than process in Connecticut, and I'm happy to learn.
Great, welcome. And Linda, how do you say your last name? Is it a hard G, a soft G?
It's a burger, like a burger.
Like a burger.
With an E.
Okay. I'll be saying your last name a lot tonight, so
Okay.
that's why I ask. All right, great. Alexis?
Hi, my name's Alexis Bond. I grew up in Maine, moved away for a bit, and I've lived back in Freeport for about 5 years now. I'm a process project manager at LO Bean, and in the past I've done quite a bit with economic analysis and different project review, but nothing exactly like we do here. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot and working with all of you.
Great, well, welcome. With that, we will head on down the agenda. The first item is an information exchange, and I'll turn that over to Caroline.
So the planning board took this month off. We were working on some different ordinance amendments behind the scene, and they had a couple back-to-back meetings last month. So no updates there as far as planning board topics. Staff approval, I forgot to bring the paperwork, but LO Bean at their OFC Order Fulfillment Center on Desert Road, they have a piece of equipment that removes snow from the top of trucks. They are proposing to replace that and move it over further away from the property line. It didn't result in any increase of pavement or impervious area. They happen to be repaving what they have out there, but no significant change. The other two things, we already did new board members. I just wanted to give you an update, and we might talk about this later tonight. We had talked about workshop with the town council, but when we saw what was on their agenda for Tuesday the 27th, it looks like it's going to be a very long night. So I did talk to Guy as to whether or not we wanted to workshop at 11 o'clock at night after talking about short-term rentals and cannabis and capital budget, and it was decided that maybe the next meeting would be more interesting. So tentatively, for board members that want to attend that workshop with the council, tentatively their first May meeting, which will be May 4th. And again, we might talk about that a little bit later tonight. And then you did have an item on tonight's agenda that does involve a subdivision. If you choose to take action on that tonight and have to sign the plan, I will reach out to you after the meeting to coordinate that aspect. And that's all I have for you under info exchange.
All right, thank you, Caroline. The next item on our agenda is the minutes from the March 17th meeting. And Linda and Alexis, since you were not here, you cannot vote to approve those minutes. So are there any comments or questions from the board about those meeting minutes?
Yes, I have one correction. It's on page 11. It's for the He Said Family Holding Project, Desert of Maine. The roll call vote should read 6 yes, 0 no, and 1 recused. Campanelli. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on the meeting minutes? Okay, So we will do a roll call vote. We will do that tonight for every agenda item. Linda and Alexis, you'll see. Because we're on Zoom, roll call, I'll call by last name and just a yes or no for approval. So for the meeting minutes, is there a motion to approve the minutes as written with the correction?
So moved.
Thank you, Adam. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Ford. All right, roll call vote. Blanchard, yes. Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki,
Yes.
Troidel,
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
All right, thank you. It's unanimous. Okay, the next item on our agenda tonight are the reviews. The first one is Mast Landing site, signage, and building alterations. So I will turn it over to Caroline for a summary.
Sure. So this project was actually one of the projects you were supposed to review before the world shut down for the pandemic. And you actually last approved changes for Mast Landing at Freeport Crossing in July of 2020. They're back before you today for some adjustments. Number one is the client knows, or their tenant knows now what they want to do for signage. They're proposing some signage over the front entrance and on the rear facade, which you'll see when you're sitting at the off-ramp on 295. Second part of this change is facing the parking lot. They do want to add a covered entrance over the existing entranceway. They're proposing materials and a door that will go with the materials that they have there. And then the third change, I think, is something that actually one of the board members questioned during the review process. They had a porch that went to grass. Well, they have now figured out what they want to do. They want to put an outdoor patio. They want to have a little lawn area for games. That whole area will be enclosed with a fence and some landscaping. Because they're increasing the impervious area, they do have some drainage improvements they need to do. You did have initial comments from Adam Bliss in your packet. He did review the submission, and you got some additional comments today because there's a few things that are outstanding, but none of them are major. If you decide to take action tonight, it would be appropriate to add a condition that those changes be reviewed and approved by the town engineer to make sure that his concerns are adequately addressed. One other thing to know, so that back patio under liquor laws will need to be fenced. So you'll see they are proposing a wood fence to enclose the area. And then after the fire chief and code enforcement officer went to the site, they discovered that they needed a second form of egress. So you do see a second path that will kind of lead to the loading area that they need for emergency egress. As far as a couple random site changes, you'll see on the Main Street side of the building, they're proposing a potential additional dumpsters. Based upon what's included in the submission, they will only add those if needed. They don't show any screening. And then there's also a couple of propane tanks that they might have to have out there. They're trying to work out the details to see if they might be able to put them underground. You do have Hannah Foley tonight here representing the applicant. If you have questions for her.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Caroline. Hannah, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to give a quick overview
Sure.
of each of the elements. Caroline gave a great intro, but tonight we're seeking a site plan amendment and design review certificate amendment for a few proposed elements. The biggest is the new outdoor patio and lawn game area. We also have the signage and the new entry structure. So for the patio, I know this was brought up at the hearing last year that my colleague Katie Weatherby presented at, and we're very excited to finally have the perfect use to activate this part of the building. We believe, in today's world, it's really more important than ever to be able to provide an outdoor dining option to make sure everyone feels comfortable. And so we're very fortunate to have this amazing area to be able to take advantage of behind the building. So we're proposing a hardscape patio area in addition to a grassed lawn game area next to it. As Caroline mentioned, they'll both be enclosed by a wood post fence, which has been reviewed and approved by Acting Chief Nate Goodman. For signage, like Caroline said, we have the new front signage on the entry structure, as well as the rear signage on the back of the building. which will be very similar to what Mast Landing has at their Westbrook location. It's also worth mentioning that we'll be painting the building a Newburyport blue, which is a Benjamin Moore historic color that's allowed in our district. So I think it's going to be a really major improvement for the building and will work really well with their proposed signage. And the last piece of what we're proposing tonight is just a new entry structure at the front entry to just refresh the appearance of the building. And that's pretty much it for the overview, but happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Okay, thanks. I'll open it up to the board. Any comments, questions? Don't be shy, guys.
I'll jump in, Guy, and keep
All
us
right.
moving. I really, I like the project. Like the last year when you brought it. I think I'm just having a little bit of issues with the dumpsters and the propane. They're in a fairly visible site, and then the dumpsters. I understand that you're not actually going to necessarily put them in now, and it would depend on the tenant, especially of the restaurant space. But the low stone wall. Taking that out without us knowing what the screening is, that just gives me a little bit of pause there. And then if there were 4 propane tanks above ground, that would not be the greatest location for sightlines, obviously.
Yeah, so with the dumpsters, we really just want to wait until we have a better understanding of what sort of the full occupied building is going to require from a trash standpoint. So for just Mast Landing, they only need 2 dumpsters, which can fit sort of tucked in where they're currently located. But during the building permit review for the interior build out, Nick Adams brought up that he was concerned if additional dumpsters would be required down the road, that we would need an additional area to place them that wouldn't conflict with the loading and egress for the building. So that's why we showed that additional area that was actually included in our building permit set for the interior work. But we are hoping to avoid building that until we really know what we need. And then if we did have to install it, we would definitely want to screen the dumpsters.
And what about the propane tanks?
For the propane, so right now we're working through the logistics with the propane company and our contractor. We're going to try to locate them underground, barring any sort of limitation with bedrock or other site constraints that would prevent that. And if they do end up being above ground, we would also want to screen them. We agree that this is going to be a great new area and destination, and we don't want propane to be, front of mind.
Okay. I guess the way the motion's written right now, Caroline, is worth, just approving it blanket, but they'd have to come back for screening anyways if they were above ground, right? Or does that need to be a condition?
Well, they're in design review, so the only thing I have any staff approval over is minor signage modifications. So if they were to screen, they would have to come back
That's what I thought.
to the board unless something was included in the proposal.
Okay, so we're just approving location if we approve it tonight.
Yeah, I guess you're approving it. So you are approving it without screening. So I think, if you're concerned that you wouldn't want it to go in without screening, you might want to add a condition to put that on there. Otherwise, I think you're giving them approval. They could plunk a bunch of dumpsters down in some propane without screening.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, I have a comment. It's about the entrance. It said that it was being designed to incorporate design features and materials of the existing building, but then it looks like it's architectural timbers with stone on the columns. And I just was wondering where that was coming from. Yeah.
There is existing stone along the side and the back of the building. And so the stone that's going to go on the piers for the new entry structure, the color will be selected to match. And then there are also wood elements that are going to be incorporated on the interior build out of the brewery space that we'd like to pull and incorporate there. And we also have Mark Chapelecki from Port City Architects on tonight. If you have sort of any further specific questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to jump in.
Okay, sure. Mark, did you have anything you wanted to say about the the
No,
entrance?
I think Hannah covered it. We were trying
Okay.
to pull some elements that were from the existing. So that is the stone that is currently around the backside and on the sides. So we're going to try and get as close as we can to that. The columns in front are square that are kind of reminiscent of the Shaw's that is on down the way. Now the Shaw's columns in front, those are brick. We don't have any brick on our end, so we're not going with brick. We're going with the stone that we have. The roof that is also pulled from some of the same materials, we're going to try and match the same shingles that are on the building currently. And then we will pull some of that timber for the roof, and that is reminiscent of some of the stuff that's inside the building, especially at the bar area and that kind of thing. So we're trying to pull some elements both from the existing and from the new.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea to see, you know, what the plans are for the inside of the building and present that on the exterior. I guess for me looking at it, you know, when I see these buildings, I mean, it's a rare example of postmodern architecture. We don't really see a lot of that up in Maine, and particularly in Freeport, you know, where the buildings were designed, you know, for one view from the on-ramp to 295, and 295, you kind of get this barn appearance. So you get that sort of stacked roof, you've got the false cupola at the top, and you've got the stone foundation. And then on the facade that presents itself to the parking area, you get this curtain wall, right? So it's this very kind of juxtaposed, you know, look that they were going for, which is pretty typical in postmodern architecture. And when I see this entrance, I don't get postmodern necessarily. I kind of see craftsman-y, because you have a pyramidal roof, you've got the stone columns, you know, you've got these timbers sort of bracing, you know, one another. So, I mean, for me, I think visually, it looks a little, I don't know, jarring, I guess, against that glass curtain wall. And so, I mean, for me, I think if the stone was removed from the columns and it was simpler and cleaner lines, I think that would go with that kind of exterior a bit better. Personally, I'd like to see, you know, sort of the bracing of the timbers gone, replacement of timbers with probably aluminum, a gable roof instead of a hip roof or a pyramidal roof like you're showing. You know, but again, this is sort of a minor addition to the building, so I don't want this to be a roadblock to the project. I'm just one person. We have a board of 7. This is my opinion. But I just feel like there was a little bit of a miss there when it came to what the building is and what is being added to it.
Okay.
I don't know if any other board members have any thoughts.
No,
Sometimes I'm the architecture outlier here.
I agree with you, Guy. I felt that way when I first saw it, but you explained it much better than I would have. So yeah, I feel like you're trying to impose something onto this structure that really belongs somewhere else, like on an L beam building or something.
It's like pull it back just a bit.
Right.
I think would be a more successful approach for the entrance than, you know, trying to do too much to pull in the inside of the outside. You know, are those timber posts planned to be white or natural?
Natural.
Yeah, I mean, we don't see that on the exterior, so it's sort of tough to get an idea of what, you know, what that's going to look like against that big glass wall that we see. You know, and it's not just this building that has that exterior. You know, the building next to it has it, and the building next to it has it. So something to think about. You know, I mean, I think, you know, I don't know how the board feels. I think if the stone was removed off the columns, I think that would make a huge improvement. I think I can appreciate that the entrance isn't being attached to the building, right? Isn't it slightly separated from the building? So it is reversible, removable at some point in time if need be.
Yeah, we have to separate it. We were afraid that the movement between the building, the existing building, and the movement between this would be different enough that we don't want to attach it to the storefront and crack the glass.
Sure, that's fair. But yeah, I mean, I think with its location being slightly separated, it does kind of present itself for further down the road in case, you know, a new tenant comes in, they can take it down if they want to go back to sort of a more austere exterior and kind of closer to that postmodern design. So those are sort of my thoughts. I don't think this is something to really hold up the project, but I think maybe if you think about toning down that entry, I think it would be more successful architecturally with the complex.
Certainly. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
I think just not to belabor the propane tanks, and I know you're trying to bury them, so hopefully that's successful. But if they're not, and you need to come back for screening, I would just try to avoid, we have a tank farm and it's just got a rectangular fence around it. That's really going to stand out. So I think it would need to be a little bit more of a linear progression along there, but hopefully you don't need to get to that point and they can go underground.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, if we do end up needing to do above ground, I can circulate something to Caroline to share with you guys for what we're thinking to do for screening if you wanted to take a look. But hopefully, like you said, we are able to put them underground.
Adam, is this something that could be delegated to staff for approval as a condition of the motion?
Well, Caroline was pointing out it's in design review, so technically I don't think has that ability.
We can't delegate it to Caroline?
You could delegate it, but I think I'd want you to be pretty specific. So if I don't hear Adam saying a fence, but if you were okay with like a 6-foot stockade fence or something, or you could say plantings, but you need to give, I think, some directive. I'm not just I don't want a blanket approval. I don't feel like that's something that would work.
Yeah, and I'm, sometimes propane tanks can get slung pretty low too. So, we have a stone wall and then we have a cemetery with a stone wall. So if we just fence it, it's going to look like, just a poor, stick out like a sore thumb there. So I think we'd want to see what it was, and it would really depend on the height. I don't think, if we say 6 feet and the propane tanks are only 3'6" off the ground or whatever, it doesn't need to be anything. So not to make them come back, but if that ends up being the case, it'd be hard to get specific, I think, without seeing what they are.
Is there any reason why the propane tanks can't be relocated to the other side of the building?
Yeah, I was wondering that too, to the north.
Yeah, we did discuss this. We have some challenges with property setback. You have to be 50 feet from your property line. And we wanted to sort of maintain the flexibility of that open area if we decided to activate building 2 next door. So we'd like to be able to have that, for future flexibility and not have that be tied down to, a propane area.
It just seems that it would be kind of awkward to have propane tanks next to a historic cemetery.
Yeah, we are the required distance away from the cemetery, which is 25 feet. And we went through this quite a bit, and we determined that this was the least obtrusive location to what we want to do for the property down the road.
Any other questions or comments? Would anybody like to make a motion?
One more thing before we make a motion. I just wanted to quickly raise a question about one of the conditions that was mentioned in the staff report, which is the requirement to establish a performance guarantee and inspection account. It seems like these conditions are a little bit more geared towards larger scale or ground up development projects rather than a smaller site work improvement project at an existing development. So I would just like to ask the board to consider if we could remove this condition. As you know, we're under construction right now for the interior of the space. Moving forward, hoping for an early summer opening. And, after this hearing, we'd like to move full steam ahead with a building permit for the site work and get going. So we just really don't want that to hold us up. So we'd just love to hear your thoughts and if you have any concerns that I can address here, but would like to get that condition removed if possible.
Can you explain how that
I think just establishing the amount and the account, I guess it would be a question of process with the town, but it just seems that, you know, it could take some time, weeks, months to get that in place. And it's a condition of before we start construction. So right now, you know, without that, we'd like to submit for our building permit, you know, as soon as possible. We're pretty much ready to go there, and then hit the ground running. So, you know, it would seem like establishing those accounts would take longer than that time frame.
Caroline, I think you're gonna have to weigh in on this because this is kind of over our.
Sure. So those are standard conditions of approval for any projects that have site work. Really what you would do is submit a cost breakdown of all the site work associated with the project. In this case, the patio, the fencing, the landscaping, the walkways, erosion control, stormwater management, etc. The town engineer would review the amount, determine if he feels like if it's adequate. If the amount seems appropriate, you'd establish a performance guarantee. That's typically a cash performance guarantee or letter of credit that's held in place until the work is completed as approved. This is a site project. There are some drainage improvements. There's some landscaping. There's a new patio. So this is something that would be inspected by the town engineer, and standard practice is that that's a cost borne by the applicant. It's really simple to establish. You bring a check to town hall and we set up the account. I mean, it's really up to the board, but it would be off from their current practice if they were to remove the conditions. And definitely for inspections by the town engineer, I don't see how I would really advise against them removing it. It's important to make sure things get built as approved.
Okay, yeah, no, we're of course happy to pay fees and work with the town engineer as necessary, do a pre-construction meeting and all that. We were just a little concerned about the process to establish the guarantee and the potential for that to delay our schedule to get the tenant open.
In the way it's written here, it's before site work. So it'd be before you start any of the site work for the patio. It's not associated with the building permit in the way that this proposed motion is worded.
Okay.
Thank you, Caroline. Any other comments or questions, or is there a motion that somebody would like to propose?
I actually have one question, and I am new to the board, so let me know if this is way off. But I'm looking at the back, and I'm saying like the back of the building from 295, you're gonna have the big Mast landing sign with like the 4 goosenecks fixtures, which I think are probably gonna look great. And then it sounds like you're gonna have the deck underneath that. What is the exterior lighting plan for where people are seated?
Yes, we have we submitted a lighting plan. We're showing 2 new exterior fixtures sort of on the building side of the patio. I think, you know, for the most part, this will be open and operating during the summer months where it's light out late and you probably won't even really need exterior lighting. But given what we've seen this past year with, you know, patios operating year round, we did want to provide Mast Landing with the flexibility to operate it during the colder months when it's darker earlier. So we do have 2 exterior light fixtures with dark tops so they don't emit any light above the shade, but we're getting power out there so they can, you know, have some lighting if needed.
Okay. That was my only question. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
I just want to
Caroline,
know,
yeah.
do you have some members of the public here tonight if you want to take public comment?
Thank you. You'll have to do this 8 times. Remind me.
I know.
Yes, are there any members of the public that have any comments?
You do not have any hands up, although you gave them the opportunity.
All right, well, thank you. Okay, is there any other comments from the board? If not, would somebody like to propose a motion?
Sure, sorry, too many windows open. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'd like to propose the following motion. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact, change of use, and design review certificate for WS Development for exterior building alterations and a site plan amendment in Freeport Crossing at 200 Lower Main Street, Tax Assessor Map 7, Lot 1, to be substantially as proposed, application dated 3/31/21, building renderings dated 3/26/21, revised through 3/31/21, and the site plans most recently revised 4/15/21. Finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport Design Review Ordinance and the Freeport Zoning Ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and his/her representatives at Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, prior to the start of any construction, the applicant obtain any applicable permits from the Freeport Codes Enforcement Officer. 3, the conditions from the July 15th, 2020 Project Review Board approval are still applicable. 4, prior to any site work, the applicant do the following. A, establish a performance guarantee in the amount to cover the cost of all site work associated with the project in an amount to be determined by the town engineer and in a form acceptable to the town attorney. The performance guarantee shall cover the cost of all site work, including but not limited to erosion control, stormwater management, landscaping in the patio area, etc. Along with the performance guarantee, a non-refundable administrative fee at the rate established by the Freeport Town Council be paid. B, establish an inspection account in the amount to be determined by the town engineer to cover the cost of inspection of site improvements by the town engineer. C, the developer have a pre-construction meeting with the town engineer. And then 5, if the new dumpsters are to be installed or if the new propane tanks are to be installed above grade, the applicant return to the project review board with proposed screening.
Thank you,
Second.
Adam. Is there a second? Thank
Second.
you,
Second.
Todd.
Yeah.
Okay, roll call vote. Berger, was that a yes?
So yes.
Yes, okay. Blanchard, yes. Bond,
Yes.
Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki,
Yes.
Troidel,
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is Linda Bean's main kitchen and Topside Tavern addition, site and building alterations. And Caroline, back to you.
So this project was last before you in November 2020. You approved an addition. They're proposing to take down the portion of the building where the ATM structure currently is and do an addition. When they did some more due diligence, they discovered that there's some underground utility lines that CMP won't let them have a structure above, which means they had to shorten the building because it was changed to a building. Again, there's nothing I could do for them. They have to come back to you. So they have a modified design, shortening the length of the building. So there'll be a little bit of space between this and the abutting polo building. It will create a little bit of an alley on the ground level. They're proposing a wooden fence to kind of enclose the area. The second story will remain similar to what was previously approved. Really the only outstanding item with this, you did get some information late today regarding the impervious area calculations. They cannot go non-conforming. It looks like there's a little bit of an increase. So they need to work out the impervious area calculations to the satisfaction of Adam to show that there's 0% increase, that they're not going over the 90. So that would be the only condition I think that you would need to add if you go forward with it based upon the motion proposed to you, that, you know, they work with the town engineer to resolve any calculations on the impervious area. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward and not a ton of changes other than really those building modifications. They did update the parking calculation. The applicant does own an off-site parking lot where they have surplus parking, so they can meet the parking requirement based upon the parking that they own. No changes to signage, lighting, or building materials. And David Matero is here tonight representing the applicant if you have questions.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. David, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I'm more than happy to go through the project with you. You have all the information. We gave you the kind of before and after views of what was approved and what we had to change. So I'm more than happy to do that with you unless you have anything specific. And regards to the impervious, we're increasing the pervious surface. So I'm not sure why we have to meet a threshold of of say 90% because we're making improvements already because we're adding pervious surface. And I can work that out with Adam because I sent him that note, and I think Caroline had copied you, and it's really late today. But I don't think that we should meet a threshold to increase our pervious surface because we should be allowed to at least build even what we have, but we're actually making improvements to it. I just want to make that sort of definition a little bit clearer. And I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Because we're increasing the pervious, even if we don't get to the 90%. But like I said, I wrote that letter. I still think we're in good shape with that. But I don't know if that should be a condition of approval. And I'm looking for my letter that I just wrote.
Yeah, I can clarify again, it came in late. It's a tough week, school vacation week. So there's a lot going on. It was more that we want to make sure that there's not an increase in the impervious area.
Okay.
And so that's why there was the suggested condition, just to
That's
make
fine.
sure
That's
Adam
fine.
can have time to review it. Not that they were being held to a whole new standard, just that they weren't increasing that there.
Okay. Okay. That's good. I have, you all have renderings, but I can bring them up if you want me to share my screen. I know you have a lot on your agenda. I can be as quick as possible. But they were relatively minor. I mean, our hands are tied because we cannot build as close to the other building as we're hoping. And Caroline, there's only one correction I'd like to make on your staff comments. I told you that the alley would be in fiber cement. Because the building wants to be masonry construction and we're building from the inside, I still want to keep the first floor as concrete block like we're doing on the second floor. And so it would be a red concrete block. And you won't see it that much, but it won't be green as you had mentioned. And that was my mistake because I told you fiber cement. And if you want me to share my screen, I can do that and show you the renderings.
That'd be real helpful, just very, very quickly.
Okay.
David, I'll give you access here. All right, you should be able to screen share now, David.
Okay. Okay. So this is the existing Linda Bean restaurant. This is where the ATM machine is currently there, and we're taking that off. We're extending the balcony again to get more outdoor seating for obvious reasons, and all of this piece was approved before. The difference is this alley. We had infilled this, and because there's a utility line that's not showing, which is right here, it goes to a transformer behind the building, and it is way too costly to move around the entire restaurant. So we're leaving this free as CMP has forced us, but they did allow us to build over it. So we're allowed to cantilever the second floor over that, which works with our cantilever that we already have on our balcony here. So that works okay, but we could not infill this alley, and that's the change. And so just so that people don't use this alley because it's only about 5 feet wide, we're proposing to install a gate in the same green that is already on the building here. So that's the extent of the change of this project.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Not really. I mean, it's very similar to last time, and it still looks nice like it did last time. Just making sure, David, that the gate hardware, there's going to be some flush bolts or something pretty heavy duty, because obviously there's a million people in that area, and just so it doesn't become something that starts flopping around over time. That's the only, because I'm sure they'll never use it because there's no real point to it.
Yeah, if 5 feet's just not quite wide enough to have a long linear bar. Otherwise, that'd be a cool space. But yes, okay.
If they we're going to put a sign like do not enter, do they then have to have a sign review?
Are you referring to the word to the ice cream?
No, what I'm talking about is if they put a sign on that gate, you know, no entry or do
Oh.
not enter or something, would that require any sign review?
The gate's going to have a lock on it, so I don't know if we have to have a sign on it that says no entry. It will be locked.
Any other questions or comments? Would anybody like to make a proposed motion?
You
I'll
do
make
have
a
members-
motion.
You have members of the public?
Oh, yes, thank you, Caroline. We have members of the public present this evening.
That's
Would
number
any-
2 so far, Guy.
You know, just stay on all night. You'll see what happens. Any members of the public that would like to comment on this application, please raise your hand. No takers.
No takers. One thing I just want to note is David did clarify the material, which I don't know that's reflected in the drawing. So if somebody makes a motion and you're okay with that first floor being the red concrete block, you might just want to, on the side facade, you might just want to incorporate that into a motion so it's clear.
Okay.
And
Right,
will
I
that then, is the gate pretty much flush with the front wall, like that red block? It will only be behind the gate, Dave?
Correct.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Just going back to Adam, you had a good point about that lock and the hardware. Is it possible to have the lock, if it's going to be like a padlock or something like that, on the inside? Because it is going to be a walkthrough. I assume you can access it from the back side, right?
Yeah, we
There,
weren't.
there could be no hardware showing on the front side. It would just be on the back side.
Yeah, I think we could do that. I mean, you can clearly walk from the rear in. So yeah, we could have a lock back there.
Yeah, the more it looks like just a wall and not even a gate,
Exactly.
you know, better
Yeah.
for everybody probably.
Yeah,
Exactly. Thank you.
that's fine. Yeah.
You want a motion, Guy?
Yes.
So to be clear, if I read the prepared motion, I would be making two changes. One is where we incorporate by reference the plan submitted. It would be to specifically note red concrete block on the side facade, and to add a third, and add a condition of approval that the impervious area calculations and the plan be reviewed and approved by the town engineer. Is that correct? Okay. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact, design review certificate, and site plan amendment for David Matero for an addition to the associated site improvements at Linda Bean's Main Kitchen and Topside Tavern at 88 Main Street, tax assessor map 11, lot 107, to be built substantially as proposed up to the application dated 3/18/21. Finding it meets the standards of the Freeport Design Review Ordinance and the Freeport Zoning Ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and his or her representatives at the project review board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent they're not in conflict with other stated conditions, including red concrete block on the side facade as recently submitted. And 2, that the impervious area calculation and plan be reviewed and approved by the town engineer. 3, conditions of the December 2020 Project Review Board approval are still applicable.
Seconded.
All right. Thank you, Fort and Adam. Roll call vote. Berger,
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond,
Yes.
Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki,
Yes.
Troidel,
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
All right. It's unanimous. Thank
Thank
you.
Yeah, thank you. And Guy, I'm not going to stay on to see if you do this 6 more
Oh,
times. I
come
hope you
on.
don't mind.
All right. The next item on our agenda tonight is Deroger's exterior building alterations. Caroline, back to you.
Sure. So Phil from Derogers is here tonight. He had done some window repairs, not realizing that it was considered a change under the design review ordinance. So it's the second floor windows on the front facade. They've been replaced with new 2/2 vinyl windows. He has SDL mullions. He did include some pictures in the submission to note that he's trying to go back to what used to more historically be there. And then the other thing he wanted to do is replace an entrance door on the side of the upper level, which you can see from the right of way when you're in front. The existing door is steel. He wants to go to fiberglass half light with 2 panels on the bottom. He didn't change the side of any openings. He retained and reused the trim, but again, material change under the design review ordinance. And Phil is here tonight if you guys have questions for him.
Thanks. Phil, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
It's
Thanks.
pretty straightforward. It's just we were replacing windows that were fixed. It was just a single pane of glass. Went back to some 2/2s, and hopefully that meets everyone's approval.
Thanks. The 2/2s look great to me. Any other comments or questions from the board?
I have a question. The windows are going to be 2/2, Phil. I'm looking at the profile for the Matthews brothers window, which isn't a 2/2, but it is the same interior and exterior profile.
Yes.
Great. I like these windows a lot, and I rarely say that.
They're nice ones. We tried. I tried to get something decent that looks like a true divided light, and they're decent. They're not cheap.
Well, it matters greatly to me, and this is a window profile for future reference. If anyone asks Caroline, I like this.
Okay, noted.
Thanks, Phil.
Good work, Phil.
Just to be clear, I see 3 windows in the front of the building. You're only replacing the 2, right? That third one up under the peak is staying?
No, the third one actually was replaced earlier. It is currently a 2/2, is like the other ones.
Okay, so they'll all match.
Yes, they'll all match. I honestly hadn't even realized that it originally was a 6x6 over there. I just thought it was 2x2s like everything else, and yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Okay, I will just, I've brought up windows so many times, but just for the project review board and for Caroline, I oftentimes, I've come close to voting against projects a number of times when we've had these hokey windows that really aren't anything close to true divided light. They're more like masking tape over a single glaze. And anytime we can steer applicants toward this, Caroline, I think it's gonna help me resist the urge to vote no. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Ford. I mean, I think, in references to, the 1904 image that Phil has provided in the application, I think that's great that you're going back to how the building originally looked. I think that's so important for sort of maintaining, the look and the feel of Freeport. So I really appreciate that addition. Just next time, come before us first. Great. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Would anybody like to make actually, would any members of the public like to comment on this application? Please raise your hand.
Nice one, Guy.
Thank you.
Good.
You have no comments, Guy. Good job.
Okay. Now, would any board member like to make a motion?
I will. I'll step up on this
Great.
one.
Thanks, Todd.
It's short and simple. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact and design review certificate for Philip Wagner, Derogers, for exterior building alterations at 120 Main Street, Tax Assessor Map 11, Lot 93, to be substantially as proposed. Application dated 3/22/2021, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport Design Review Ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previous previously approved plan submitted by the applicant and his/her representatives at the project review board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, the applicant obtain any applicable permits from the Freeport Codes enforcement officer.
Thanks, Todd. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Geraldine. Roll call vote. Berger,
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond,
Yes.
Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki,
Yes.
Treudel,
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. The next item on our agenda tonight is Chilton Furniture. They're actually before us tonight with 2 different applications. This first one is for a new replacement sign. Caroline?
Sorry, I turned too many pages in the staff report there. So I can't remember who was here representing the applicant for the sign. Scott, are you here for the sign? Are you here for the building?
Hold on.
Oh, it looks like the property owner, Jan, is here. So I'll move Jan over to be a panelist. So the Chilton's does have 2 separate applications before you tonight. They decided to bring them in separately. They have 2 different people working on 2 different components. Chilton's has an existing ground sign. They did want to replace it. I felt that it was a significant enough change that kind of exceeded the staff approval threshold of the ordinance, which is why they're here before you tonight. The only thing that kind of came up in review, it appears it'll meet the size. They will need to confirm before installation that it's located entirely on private property. You can't have a sign in the right of way. In this case, they're not just repairing it, they're replacing it. So that would be the only condition of approval. Otherwise, it's pretty standard application for signage. You did have drawings of the sign and the appearance in your packet. And Jan, the owner of Chilton's, is here if you guys have any questions, and she can kind of talk to you about the rebranding if you want to hear about that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Caroline. Jen, did you have anything to add?
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Caroline. I also have the sign company is also on the call. I guess somehow we came in as public, which is fine. But if you have any specific questions about the sign, he would be the one, Josh Doiron, to address them to. But yeah, the rebranding, we really felt that this was actually going to be a big improvement because we think it's going to be a more understated sign, and it reflects our desire to have sort of a nod toward tradition with that shiplap look and tie it in with a slightly more modern look and feel. And so we were hoping that it would be a sort of a quieter voice, actually. And we think it's more in keeping with the Freeport style. So we hope everybody likes it. And I understand we have to verify that it's not, I guess that it's on our property. I believe it is. So, and we are not moving location. So we can certainly confirm that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
So if I'm reading this correctly, and I am new to the board, so bear with me here, but it looks like the sign's going to be in approximately, it's going to be the same exact space and pretty much the same exact size. You're really just changing from a red to what looks like a shade of green to kind of match your exterior building. And the text actually gets a little bit smaller, but even the lighting's going to stay the same.
The lighting will stay the same. That's correct. And yes, the color will be more of a gray tone, like you said, to match the building. It's really gray. I know it appears green in the photo. It's more of a gray, foggy gray. Yes, that is right. And the lettering does get smaller, and the diamond will be a little bit smaller as well. It's just it's a rebranding. It's a little more subtle, we felt.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I kind of got everything there.
Yeah.
I think you look great.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments from board members?
Well, and it says shiplap appearance. Will that be actual wood shiplap and then painted, or is the sign face itself aluminum as well?
That's why Josh is on. So I'm not sure if you can enable him. I don't know exactly what the material is. It does look like wood. We've actually just done this sign down in our New Portland location. So it's going to be identical to that sign. But unfortunately, I don't know how to share my screen, but I do have a better picture of it. If I were able to do it, and Josh probably has it as well. But yeah, it does look like wood. It's whatever that material is. Are you able to enable Josh? Because he can probably speak to that.
I'm sorry, I did enable Josh. He just has to unmute. I'm pulling up your email from earlier, and I will do a quick screen share just so everyone
Oh, great.
can see
Thank you.
what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's actually an aluminum, the frame itself is aluminum, and then the actual shiplap faux face is actually an aluminum clad, so that it's going to appear and stay new for a really long time. So we do an automotive finish on it and stuff. So we try to stay away from that raw wood so that it doesn't deteriorate with water over the years and stuff like that. The actual material is an HCM material, but it's basically a fully aluminum sign with an automotive finish on it so that it is going to hold up for 10, 15 years and still have the outcome.
And it says curved, so it is like a brake metal, so there is a dimensional quality to
Yeah,
the...
there's actually, it's a 1/4 of an inch reveal. So if you're looking at the rendering and you see those lines, which would be the shiplap lines, that's about a 1/4 of an inch by a 1/4 of an inch inset.
Okay.
And then the Chilton's Furniture and the Diamond are all dimensional, 1/4 inch dimensional letters that come outside of that. So, and then the frame is again a 1/4 of an inch in addition to all of that. So there's some dimension to it. So it has a nice aesthetic appeal.
Okay, great. Yeah, that helps a lot, that description. Thank you.
Good.
I'm just a little, it seems to be inconsistent with the other signs in the area. It seems to be, fairly modern, which I'm sure this is what you're trying to do. But I'm just concerned that it's going to be very different than, for example, the Bath Savings sign across the road, or, again, going down towards downtown. The signs are all very similar, 2 posts and I don't know what design you call that.
Well, I think it really is supposed to be a sort of a combination. It's supposed to be a modern voice, but on something very traditional. So we tried to blend sort of an old and new voice together to show sort of, coming into the new century and having a modern voice, but with, like I said, a nod, sort of a nod to history. And that is in fact what we tried to do. And as I mentioned before, if you could take a look down, and I wish I had this, a photograph of our Portland location on Commercial Street. It has a very traditional feel, but just sort of a more clean, appearance in our view. But I understand. I mean, it definitely is, a departure from what we had before, for sure, and probably, not, the same as everything else. I feel it's still fairly consistent. I think it's very consistent with a lot of when you go downtown, the Banana Republic. I think there are a lot of signs that have that sort of thin line, very simple lettering. And I feel like it does keep a consistent voice, even though it doesn't have sort of the accoutrements of sort of the colonial style. But I know what you're saying. It's definitely different.
Yeah, I think it's different than the rest of the signs I'm seeing all the way down to the railroad tracks, the bridge.
Down to the bridge. Yeah, the credit union next door went with a more modern graphic
Exactly,
look.
except for the
They only have that
credit
one
union.
pylon near the street. So
Yeah.
I was looking, so it's not matchy with the credit union, but
Right.
that has a little bit of a more modern look to it.
Definitely.
I have to say, I like that it's smaller. I think our sign ordinance allows too many signs, too big of signs. So I actually appreciate that it's a smaller scale. So, and I don't have, because we don't have any consistent sign language in our ordinance either, I don't think it's out of place, or I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Or members of the public?
All right.
Okay, would any board member like to make a proposed motion?
I will make a motion. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact and design review certificate for Chilton Furniture Company for replacement ground sign at 184 Lower Main Street, Tax Assessor Map 8, Lot 3, to be substantially as approved, application dated 03/24/2021, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport Design Review Ordinance with the following conditions of approval. Number 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and his or her representatives at the Project Review Board meeting and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. Number 2, the applicant obtain any applicable permits from the Freeport Code Enforcement Officer. And number 3, per the Freeport sign ordinance, the sign will need to be located entirely on private property and out of the public right of way.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Adam. All right, roll call vote. Berger,
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond,
Yes.
Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki,
Yes.
Troidel,
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda tonight is Palmer and Company, a change of use, exterior building alterations, and replacement signage. And I just have to disclose up front that I have worked with one half of the applicant, Megan, on Historical Society fundraisers, but I do not feel like I need to recuse myself from this application. And Caroline?
Sure.
Hand it over to you. Yep.
We won't maybe call it this for much longer, but the former Corsican and Perfect Spell restaurant is the building on 9 Mechanic Street. It's a Class C building. It's actually not that old. Unfortunately, the previous structure was lost in a fire and they came before the board to rebuild the structure that's there today. On the first floor, it's currently been a restaurant. They're going to change it to retail. In the village, retail to restaurant can be done with planner approval. The second floor, they're proposing to put a dwelling unit. And so currently you can have a dwelling unit in the village, 1 or 2 dwellings on other than the first floor, subject to site plan review. So that's what they're coming before you with. They are proposing a couple changes. The first one out front, there's some landscaping. They're proposing to put a stone path leading to some new front steps, connecting the front steps to the sidewalk. Portion of that is in the right of way. They will have to get an entrance permit from Public Works. They'll also just have to give us some kind of calculation to demonstrate that they're still going to apply with the maximum impervious coverage on the site. So that's a proposed condition. In regards to the building, the current entrance doesn't face Mechanic Street. It actually faces Main Street. So if you're standing in front of the building, you can't see it. So what they're proposing to do is take that existing entrance door and put it facing the road so that you could walk up from the sidewalk, up the new stairs and into the building. They will replace the entrance facing Main Street with a solid door, as that's what's going to lead to the upstairs residential unit. There will be some trim replacement and there's some details that were included in your packet. And they're also proposing to replace signage, which is consistent with what was previously on the building in regards to location, lighting, and signage. That's something that could have been done at the staff level, but since they're coming to you anyways, we just bring you the whole package. And Ben and Megan are here representing the application tonight if you have questions.
All right, thanks, Caroline. Ben, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, thank you guys all for your time. Thanks, Caroline. I think I'll answer any questions you have. just a quick overview from my point of view was, as far as the entrance goes, we love the building. It's a beautiful building, but as Caroline kind of mentioned, it's kind of an awkward entrance. And so we're hoping if we get it to be retail, that it will be much more welcoming from right off the Mechanic Street to come and approach the building. As I saw in the staff report, the impervious surface is at 72% right now. And the small patio that is proposed is just over 1% of the total. So it would make it to about 73.2%, and I'll get all those calculations to Caroline. But it's pretty far below that 90% threshold. And any questions you guys have, I'm happy to answer them if I can.
Thanks. Any questions or comments from the board?
Just Ben, in the submission, you're proposing the door with the paneling next to it, not a door with side lights, correct?
Yeah, we just kind of in keeping the building as close to as possible. That is actually the current door to the building, which you can't, well, you can actually see it in the picture below if you guys have your materials. So what my thought was to kind of trim it in a way that matches the trim currently on that first floor, but also try to make somewhat of a statement to make it feel a little more prominent as far as like it being a retail entrance and welcoming people. But no, I guess the short answer to your question is no, it's not side lights. They're just kind of meant to oversize that area.
Okay, good.
Any other questions or comments? I think the moving the door to the front is an improvement. It was an awkward entrance.
I think that it needed that to begin with, so it's a good addition.
Thank you.
Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this application? Okay, do we have any board members that would like to make a proposed motion?
I'll make it, Guy.
Okay, thanks.
Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the findings of fact, change of use, design review certificate, and site plan amendment for Benjamin Palmer at 9 Mechanic Street, tax assessor map 11, lot 95, for exterior building alterations and a change of use from restaurant to retail first floor and dwelling unit on this other than on the first floor second level. To be built substantially as proposed, submission date 3/11/21. Find that it meets the standards of the Freeport Design Review Ordinance and the zoning ordinance and the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and his or her representatives at the Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they're not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, prior to any site work or applying for a building permit, the applicants shall submit documentation to the town planner to demonstrate that the installation of the walkway and stairs, with the installation of walkway and stairs, they will still be in compliance with the requirement of a maximum impervious surface to lot area ratio of 90%. 3, prior to the start of any site work, the applicant obtained an entrance permit for the proposed walkway from the Freeport Department of Public Works. 4, prior to the start of any building construction, the applicant obtained building permit from the code enforcement officer. 5, prior to applying for any building permit, the applicant obtained written capacity to serve letter from the Freeport Sewer District with a copy to be submitted to the Freeport Planning Department. 6, prior to certificate of occupancy being issued, but for the change of use, the applicant submit required paperwork for parking recalculation to the town planner, and subsequently submit proof of providing the amount of the required parking. 7, Prior to installation of proposed signage, the applicant receive a sign permit from the Freeport Code Enforcement Officer.
All right. Thank you, Ford. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Oh, Todd.
All right. Thanks, Todd. Okay, roll call vote. Berger,
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond,
Yes.
Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki,
Yes.
Troidel,
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it.
The next item on our agenda tonight was the Winslow Park site plan amendment, and that's been tabled at the request of the applicant. So we move on to the next item. That's the Spruell Sense residential fence, and I apologize if I mispronounce the last name. And I'll turn it over to Caroline.
Sure. So the applicant has a property on the Park Street right across from the Hilton Garden Inn. They have a wood fence on one side of their property that was put in years ago when the Hilton Garden Inn was built, but they do want to include other portions of their property. So you have some pictures of some fencing. They want to have portions of aluminum, portions abutting the nearby residences would be wood, and they'll have aluminum gates. They did include a plot plan in your folder, in your packet, sorry, kind of showing what they want to put here. And that both owners of the property are here to answer any questions. Again, this is before you under site changes that require design review under the design review ordinance when changes like this are visible from any right of way.
Thank you, Caroline. Would the applicants like to add anything to what Caroline just said?
Hi,
Hello.
Spruell, Denise, but you were close.
Spruell, Sinise, okay. Thank you.
Otherwise, it's the sense fence. But no, we think Caroline explained it really well. And we have talked with our neighbors who are okay with the designs that we chose because we didn't want it to look like it was oppressive, that we were walling ourselves in. And just if you have any questions, the aluminum fence will be really up against trees in the back side of the property and along the parking lot for the Hilton Garden. So I think it will just blend in, and we just want to keep our little dog and our grandchildren safe in our own yard.
And there will be the fence, the common fence line between us and our neighbors that's marked in red in your packet is, I think we were talking about a 5 foot. And so there would be some visibility over the top of that a little bit too, right? Through the, I can't remember, is it spindles?
No, there are no spindles.
No spindles. Can't remember. Oh yeah, we've looked at so many styles. I'm sorry. That shadow box style would allow a little bit of visibility through there on an angle, but it would mostly be a privacy appearance.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, any members of the public that would like to comment on this application, please raise your hand. Okay. Would any board member like to make a proposed motion?
I'd like to propose the following motion. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact and design review certificate for Mark Spruell and Gail Sinise for a new fence at their property at 4 Park Street, Tax Assessor Map 13, Lot 68, to be substantially as proposed, application dated 3/29/21, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport Design Review Ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plan submitted by the applicant and his/her representatives as project review board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions.
All right, thank you, Adam. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Geraldine. Roll call vote. Berger,
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond,
Yes.
Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki,
Yes.
Troidel,
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. Enjoy your fence.
Thanks all very much.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Freeport Heights Retirement Community on Old County Road. And there's a public hearing for this application, and I'll turn it over to Caroline.
Yeah, so people that have been on the board are familiar with Tom and this project. They got approval years ago and keep coming back to renew it. In this case, there's no changes proposed, no ordinances impacting this project have changed. There are some conditions of the past two approvals that will kind of go along with this. You know, updating SUNA from the sewer district, making sure they have their valid DEP permits. In this case, they came in before the 2 years was up, so it's just an extension, so it doesn't reopen the entire application because the board already found that it met the standards. It's really just extending the subdivision and site plan approvals. It is approving or extending the approval for a subdivision. So if you approve it, there would be a plan that you'd have to come by and sign. We'll probably have that for you early next week, and we would coordinate that with you. One thing to note, there was some dates included on the plan, but they would have to start substantial construction within 2 years of this approval. Otherwise, return to the board. Otherwise, there's really nothing outstanding. It's just an extension, and Tom Emery's here if you guys have questions for him about the project. And it is a public hearing that you'll need to open and close, as Guy did note. And you do have 2 members of the public still.
Stragglers hanging on. All right, thank you, Caroline. Tom, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you to the board. I just want to let you know that Craig Coffin was called away this evening on a urgent matter down in Boston and apologizes for not being able to attend. But we very much appreciate the board's attention and we're happy to answer any questions. Caroline did a wonderful job summarizing the situation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
I guess, Tom, our motion has approving the phasing. Did the phasing just change dates, or did the phasing change, land area at all?
No, nothing has changed in land area, buildings. It's just simply a change of the dates.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, if no other questions or comments from the board at this time, is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Adam. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Geraldine. Roll call vote. Berger,
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond,
Yes, sorry, I was muted.
it's okay. Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki,
Yes.
Troidel,
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. The public hearing is open. If any members of the public would like to comment on this application, please raise your hand. Does not seem like we have any comments from the public.
Make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Ford. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Is roll call vote. Berger,
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond,
Yes.
Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki,
Yes.
Troidel,
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's unanimous. Public meeting, our public hearing is closed. Any other comments or questions from the board? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to propose the following motion. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board grant an extension of the previously approved site plan and subdivision approvals for the proposed Freeport Heights Retirement Community on Old County Road, Tax Assessor Map 26, lots 38A, 38B, and 38C, to be built substantially as proposed, updated subdivision recording plan dated 3/29/2021, finding that no municipal ordinances affecting the approvals have changed, and therefore the application would still meet the standards of the Freeport subdivision ordinance and the Freeport zoning ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and his/her representatives as Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, the findings of fact and conditions of approval related to the board's 6/28/2017 approvals and most recently extended on 5/15/2019 are still applicable with the exception of condition 2, which is updated as follows. The board approves the phases as presented by the applicant in the submission cover letter dated March 31st, 2021, and each phase is approved for the time as noted. Construction of the first phase must be initiated, as defined by the Freeport subdivision ordinance, within 2 years of this approval by 4/21/2021. The construction phasing plan is approved for the construction of all site work, including the driveway, roads, parking areas, landscaping, erosion control, and stormwater management, etc. The buildings do not need to be completed within this phasing schedule. The commencement date for the start of a subsequent phase under the phasing schedule may be extended by the Project Review Board. Phasing may be accelerated if the required performance guarantee has been established for each separate phase under construction and if applicable fees will be paid. But such acceleration shall not alter the beginning and end date for commencement of other subsequent phases unless requested by the applicant in accordance with this approval. If construction of a phase is not initiated in the time allotted, the approval for all remaining phases becomes void unless otherwise approved by the Project Review Board prior to expiration of such phase. If during such time prior to construction, rules and regulations of the state or other governing body besides the town change and require changes to the plan, the applicant may be required to return to the town for approval of such changes. If town standards affecting the plan change, those standards will be applicable at such time that the applicant returns to the board.
Thank you, Adam. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you, Linda. Roll call vote. Berger?
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond?
Yes.
Campanelli?
Yes.
Reiki?
Yes.
Troidel?
Yes.
Yankee?
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Very much appreciated.
The next item on our agenda tonight is the Goslings Nursery School, a change of use and site plan amendment. Caroline?
So you have Melissa Yates here. She's looking to occupy a building on US Route 1 South that was formerly occupied by Wayside Publishing, a portion of that. It's the same building that True Value Freeport Hardware is located in. She'll be on the opposite end. Their changes are pretty minimal. It does include a fenced outdoor play yard, which will have a grass surface and some play mats inside. They're not going to remove any vegetation or disturb any of the previously approved buffering. It is on the other side of the parking lot, so they do show a walkway where they could take kids either out the side or rear door and kind of go around the perimeter of the parking lot. Because of the setback, she can't really put a structure, so at this point it would probably just remain dirt as it exists today, but it would be a route around. She did submit information from the capacity letter from the sewer district and information about existing parking and the needs that the various uses on the site would need in regards to shared parking. They're not increasing impervious area, so there won't be any changes to stormwater. You know, if you saw the comments from the town engineer, he did note that the existing stormwater facilities do need some maintenance. That's something that, you know, as a side, we'll reach out to the property owner that they need to look at that. She has one sign that's proposed. It's a building sign, not a ground sign, and she's here to answer any questions. One other thing just to notice, there is an existing dumpster pad, so she is going to utilize that. It's back near the building, and they are proposing to enclose that with chain link fence.
All right, thank you, Caroline. Melissa, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, she pretty much covered it. She's been very helpful through the whole process. So thank you, Caroline. I'm just really excited to keep my little nursery school in the town of Freeport, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have for me.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
I guess just on the sign, we have the sign drawing, but I'm just looking at location. Wayside headed above, I guess the door in the middle. Is it, you're going in the same spot?
Yep, they would be going in the same spot.
Any other questions or comments? On the sign, is it, so it's blue with a black print, is that right?
It's
hard
not
to tell.
gonna be blue. I'm not
Okay.
not a fan of the blue, so that's what my business card is. I think that I might change the color to like a lighter gray
Okay,
with the black lettering.
okay. I mean, because at least on the printouts that we received, the change in color was sort of subtle between the blue and the black, and so it might be hard to read.
Yeah,
and so
I think
that
I'm
was
just gonna go with a lighter color
Okay.
and then the black lettering.
Okay.
Is it regarding the dumpster? Is chain link fence permissible, or am I getting confused with the new and old structure? Where are we with that?
I don't believe it says they can. When the town engineer made his comments, he kind of flagged enclosing the dumpster. They weren't proposing to enclose it, but based upon the comment, they added a chain link fence. So I think, should look for feedback from the board on that.
Does it seem like, well, we had an applicant do chain link fence and then they put the vinyl in as a screen, but that was a new project. So I don't know, since this is an existing, if we can do anything about that. Because it's more the visual, right? It's a visual screen versus a safety.
Melissa could address if she has safety concerns with the children, but I think, yes, you're right. Historically, when this board's looked at it, it's more been a visual screening to screen the appearance of the dumpsters.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the children at all. They won't have access to it at all. So I guess it was just a visual thing.
Can I ask a question? Or do I have to be recognized? I don't know how you do it.
No, you can speak up. You're a board member. Speak up whenever you'd like.
Okay, I will jump right in. It says that there's no exterior lighting additional added. Is there enough lighting for where the addition of the playground is going to be? In case, I know you're not going to be having them outside when it's nighttime, but it might get dark at certain time, early in the morning or later.
Yeah, usually if it gets, dark at all, we head right in. So usually, I guess it depends on the time of year. Again, it gets darker in the winter. But if it got dark enough, we would make sure we were inside with the kids. I guess I hadn't really noticed, I haven't been there during the evening to notice how dark it gets and what time, but we would be very diligent about bringing them right in.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
This is just kind of an informational question, but so there's the hardware store and then there's what the print place used to be. If that turns into the nursery, is that entire building now full? Like, are those the only two commercial entities in that space?
So there was a warehouse next to the space that I'm going to be occupying. Nobody's currently in that space. It was offered to me to take as well, but it's completely unfinished, so it needed a lot of work. I don't know if anybody has any interest in it, but I didn't really need that space. So right now that's vacant, and then I'm in the middle, and then the hardware store.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this application? Does not seem that we do. If we don't have any other questions or comments from the board, would somebody like to make a motion?
I would like to propose a motion.
Okay, thank you.
Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact, change of use, and site plan amendment for the Goslings Nursery School, Tax Assessor Map 26, Lot 52, to be built substantially as proposed, application dated 03/20/2021, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport zoning ordinance with the following conditions of approval. This approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and his or her representatives at Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. Prior to the installation of a sign, the applicant obtain a sign permit from the Freeport Codes Enforcement Officer, and prior to the start of any construction, the applicant obtain a building permit from the Freeport Codes Enforcement Officer.
Thank you, Alexis. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Is that Adam, I think?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay, all right. Roll call vote. Berger?
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond?
Yes.
Campanelli?
Yes.
Reiki?
Yes.
Troidel?
Yes.
Yankee?
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda tonight is the Chilton Furniture second application. It's the exterior building alterations, and I'll turn that over to Caroline.
Sure. So Scott is here for this application, but you had some images included in the submission. So you see the side building facade. They're proposing to do some window replacement of 9 windows. New windows will be vinyl and have a 2/2 appearance with mullions between the glass. They did include some window detail in the submission. There's some wood awnings over the windows. They're proposing to remove those. There was a second page in your submission just to show what it looks like potentially without those gone that they have in another location. And on the peaked facade, they are proposing to replace multiple sets of windows. There's some double hung windows, which they are proposing to replace with a vinyl with sheets between the glass. Those would match some existing double hung windows that are on that side of the building. In the center image, there's some 3 panels of glass they're proposing to replace. There's not really a material change. In that case, they'll just be repairing trim with wood if they can't reuse what's there. They've been doing some improvements and they have a lot of rot on the building, which is why you're seeing all this before you tonight. And then there's a remaining large glass window that they are also proposing to replace with vinyl. The applicant's here if you have questions or if you need to kind of walk through it. And then Jan, the business owner, is still on as well.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to add anything or walk us through perhaps some of the changes? I think you're muted.
Is that better?
That's better. Thank you, Scott.
Okay. Great, thank you. I guess we can go with Exhibit A on the parking lot side of the building. Pretty much we're going to ask him to replace the clapboards that are existing there now. It would be identical. And as you mentioned, we would like to replace the windows with the mullions going down. It would be a 2/2, I believe, is what we discussed. And the window trim boards around the windows would be removed and replaced with what we call an ASAC product, which is a vinyl product. And then also remove the awnings and not put those back on. That's the first part of the renovation for this building. Okay. And then Exhibit D, facing the other side of the parking lot. As you can see, the 2 windows on the second floor and the 2 windows on the third floor would be identical on the first floor. In other words, removing the 2 windows that are on the first floor and replacing them identically on the windows on the second and third. And the 3 picture windows that are dead center in the building would be replaced identical to what's there now. And then the window to the right side, that's more of a rectangle window, would be replaced with a window that's identical there now. And I think that's it.
Thanks. Any questions or comments from the board?
The windows along the barn are matching on the side of the barn. Are they matching windows you have elsewhere on the barn?
That is correct. Let me verify that. The windows that are on the side of the parking lot that have the mullions going down the middle will be replaced identically what's there now. On the back side of the building, there are new vinyl windows that have, I believe, a 3/3 double hung window. Mullions.
The windows that are in place now don't have any real exterior mullion, so there's no shadow line. Is that and it's the same for the windows you're putting in? Is that right?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, the windows don't have mullions. They just have something inside of the glass. Is that correct?
Well, the windows that she's showing here on the screen, those windows there don't have any mullions at all.
Right. I'm talking about I think the ones on Exhibit C.
Okay. So the top windows have a mullion going down the middle, and the 2 down below don't have anything at all.
Right. And the mullion is inside of the glass. There's nothing on the outside of the glass.
Oh, my bad. Yes, they're inside the glass, sir. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Ford, I just want to clarify that Exhibit C is only there, for example, that is not the Freeport store, that's the Scarborough store. So that's not this building. It was just there to show you what a similar size window could look like without the awning. So the changes before you are the windows on Exhibit A, as you see right here, and then the windows described on Exhibit D.
But Exhibit A's new windows are going to look like the windows in Exhibit C with that 6 grill pattern.
No. My understanding is that the windows here are they're going to remove these awnings. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Sorry.
Yep.
The windows now are wood and they're going to replace them with vinyl. Same style, same size, just material change and then removing those awnings. So it will have solid trim around.
And one more thing, they will have the 4, I don't know what you call it. Is it divided light? There'll be 4, I don't know what they're called, mullions to match the front of the building.
Yeah, 2/2, right? Is that what you're describing?
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yep.
Yes,
not,
2/2.
Not as in Exhibit C, we've got multiple.
Right.
I mean, to be honest, I guess we could go either way. We just thought the rest of the Freeport buildings seemed to have 2/2. So we thought we'd match that. That was the thinking.
Yep. And 2/2 works for the architectural style of the building, which is an Italianate. It's been altered, obviously, but a 2/2 window would be consistent with that style. With regard to the Exhibit A and the side of the barn and those awnings, do you know if those are original or not to the barn?
I don't know. I do know we have some older photographs in which they appear. So there is some chance. And to be very honest, part of me wanted to keep them. It's just that they're very rotten. And to replace them at this time was very costly. So we couldn't do it. So we either keep them rotten or take them off.
Yeah, so
The-
details like that are what give the buildings its style, right? So once we start taking them off, then you're sort of stripping the building of its place and time. And so I think that removing them would be inappropriate for this building. And I understand that they're rotting, but if you could, replace them in kind, this board would have no problem at all approving that. So,
Yeah.
it's those sort of architectural details that we look, particularly for the historic buildings in town, that we retain them, because we do allow things like, window upgrades or door changes, additions and whatnot, because, things need replacing over time. But we hope that for items, features like architectural details, that those are retained.
Yeah,
I agree with that guy. The side windows, the hoods are echoes of the details, the more prominent details on the front elevation of the barn.
Okay, I guess we can just go ahead and, just remove the dry rot and then replace them, Jen, with the right material. So it's consistent with the look for the town of Freeport.
Okay.
I think an in-kind replacement is, completely appropriate.
Okay, yeah. So it would
Are we
stay
able
the
to
same.
change the window without doing the repair on the top on those awnings at this point? Or do we have to do the awnings at this time if we replace the windows?
It would make sense to do everything at once.
Okay.
I just want to clarify. So 2 things. One, for the applicant, if you get a design review approval, it is good for 2 years. So you have
Okay.
2 years to complete
Good.
the work. I'm a little bit unclear as to, I understand that the board's indicating that they don't want to see those awnings removed, but I'm unclear as to material. Would it still be wood if they are repaired?
I would suggest using the product called AZAC. It's a compressed kind of plastic board, which is a lot of towns are using for longevity and appearances. You would, standing on the side of the road, you would not know if that was wood or AZAC. Stand there looking at it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we've had an applicant come and suggest that material for architectural details. And any board members, I don't know if you can recall. Generally, it's things like the trim and the siding that we
Yeah,
see,
that's what I was gonna say.
most
It's
frequently
usually
replaced, right?
trim and siding, but
Yeah.
to mimic the wood, right?
Yeah, because it's a lot harder, especially for the brackets underneath those awnings, to recreate that in a plastic material. I would be open to a different material. I mean, we've approved hardy plank or hardy plank type siding, and instead of wood clapboards, for example. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's sort of up. The board needs to maybe discuss that a bit.
Guy, I've seen
Yeah.
the bracket that I'm picturing has a couple radiuses on it, but I've seen AZAC used on a bandsaw with intricate trim. The Department of Interior doesn't like it, but I'm on a nonprofit that does historic restorations, and we are using it just because the quality of wood now is so bad.
Right.
These things would rot out again in another 15 years if you use pine.
Right. I mean, that's why I'm definitely open to substitute materials. I just don't know.
The substitute material recommended now is clear mahogany, because that's the equivalent of old pine, and that's brutally expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, the AZAC is pretty workable, and especially in white, it's probably its best color. Trying to paint that stuff can sometimes not work out very well, but.
Right. Okay, great. Good. Thank you. I think education for me. Are there any other questions or comments from the board on this application?
Yeah, just going back to that discussion. The AZAC, can you get it on that width of dimension?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and look at the fine citizens of the world on Google post pictures that you can just get right to on Google Maps, and it's pretty chunky, so it looks like it'd be fairly workable in AZEC, and it's not so complicated or ornate.
And it is a nice feature.
So if you guys decide to go forward and take action on this tonight, I think there's two things that you might want to clarify in the motion before you. There's a little bit of confusion as to what those windows were going to be. So I think it'd be good for somebody to clarify that the 9 replacement vinyl windows on the side would have a 2/2 configuration and appearance. I feel like we saw a couple different things. Make sure, correct me if I'm wrong there. And then I think you would also need to acknowledge that the aprons will be retained and can be repaired with AZEC material, because obviously that would be considered a material change under the ordinance, which is why I asked the question, so that they wouldn't have to come back if that's something that the board's okay with.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Do we have any members of the public still around? No, okay.
I gave up.
All right. It's getting late. If no other board members have questions or comments, would somebody like to present a motion?
I'll take a crack at it.
Oh, go for it.
Thanks, Todd.
I don't know, Adam. You speak the language better than I do. But you can correct me. I shall move, be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings and of fact and design review certificate for Chilton Furniture Company for a replacement. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. No.
I don't think you.
That's a bad cut and paste error on my part. Sorry about that, Todd.
Let's see.
You could say exterior building alterations.
For exterior building alterations at 184 Lower Main Street, Tax Assessor Map 8, Lot 3, to be substantially as proposed, application dated March 30, 2021, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport Design Review Ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previous approved plan submitted by the applicant and his or her representatives at Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application to the extent that they are not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, the applicant obtain any applicable permits from the Freeport Codes Enforcement Officer. And 3, that the 9 replacement windows on the side of the building are 2/2. And 4, that the aprons above the windows on the side of the building are maintained or replaced in kind with either wood or acceptable material such as AZEC. Did I get it right?
I think that sounds good to me.
Second.
And there's a second. Who was that?
Me,
Is
Adam.
that Adam? Okay. All right. Roll call vote. Berger,
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond,
Yes.
Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki.
Okay. I'm going to vote against this, but I'm doing it knowing you've got your 4 votes, and I want you folks to prevail on this. But I have an issue which I now can address. I think that the design review ordinance standard, when it talks about size of windows, I think that we should have windows with an outside shadow line, Because when you look across a window without an outside mullion, you don't get a shadow line and you see a bigger opening than is intended by those make-believe mullions. And so this is an opportunity for me to vote no. I want you folks to prevail, but I want Caroline to be able to say in the future, we got at least one person on the board who's going to insist on outside mullions. So I hope that doesn't give anybody a headache, but I'm voting against.
May I ask a question? I know it's in the middle.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, when you say that, are you just saying the real true divided lights, like having
real true divided lights are really expensive because with insulated glass, it's a complicated thing to engineer, and would certainly be my preference, and it's what I buy personally. It's a lot to impose on people, but for a few dollars more, something that would stay in, that would be within the budget, in my opinion, of almost every project we see. You can have a fake piece of plastic or aluminum on the outside that breaks up the glass in a reflection and shows a shadow. And to me, it's what I think we should require of applicants.
Got it.
And
We're okay doing that. We are comfortable.
Well, that's very
prefer that
nice of you.
myself.
Well,
Yeah.
then I think that would be great.
I didn't realize we were not. I'll be honest. I would prefer the actual true divided light myself as well.
Yeah.
I don't think we have the budget for that at this point, but I really appreciate that. I understand what you're saying, and I think we can move forward with that.
Thank you very
At
much.
least-
And
at
Caroline
least-
said, we should also note that I asked for it and the applicant was willing to do it. Thank you very much. That's nice.
You're welcome.
Do we need to start over with the motion then?
Did anyone ever second the motion?
Oh, yeah, we were
Okay,
roll
so I
calling.
think somebody could make a friendly amendment so that the applicant has the opportunity to do, it'd probably be the simulated divided lights where they're going to apply the mullion to the outside. So I think somebody would want to amend that so they have that flexibility and don't have to come back to you. for that.
I will go ahead and move to make an amendment to that, to my motion, to include a condition 5 that the windows include a simulated exterior mullion.
Is that going to be it?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
let me just back up. At a minimum, a simulated mullion. If you want to go true, fantastic.
Maybe after 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Then I will start the roll call vote over again to make sure that we're capturing the entire motion.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So is it the 9 windows facing the parking lot we're doing that? Or is it going to be the other 2 on the other side, which we're going to mimic the windows on the 2nd and 3rd floor?
I think Ford's intention, I don't want to speak for you, Ford, was that all the windows should be simulated divided light.
They won't match the rest of the windows.
That's my concern. I think
And that's the concern.
it would be my preference. I think if we just go on the side, we don't have the clash against something that's already in place, Guy.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so, all right.
So that would be
Gotcha.
on the side windows.
Just the barn, the side of the barn. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
Sharon, did you get that?
Poor Sharon. Okay, roll call vote once more. Berger,
Yes.
Blanchard, yes. Bond,
Yes.
Campanelli,
Yes.
Reiki,
Yes.
Troidel,
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
All right, thank you. It's unanimous.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Jen, thank you,
you.
Jen. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Jen. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, the next item on our agenda tonight is item 4, discussion on upcoming workshop with the Freeport Town Council.
All right, so as I said, the tentative date changed to May 4th. And so just to give a little update to Alexis and Linda, once a year, boards and committees are given opportunities to meet with the Freeport Town Council. Boards don't always choose to do it, and we haven't always done it in the past, but we had great hopes as a board of meeting with the council last year, and then it didn't go forward due to the pandemic. Typically, boards and committees meet with the council, like they'll do a whole bunch of workshops in one night and get 15 minutes, but the board has a lot of comments to share with the council as to what they've been working on. So they are going to go on a regular council agenda, will be at the agenda, and have a workshop of amount of time to be determined. We have a placeholder of a half an hour, but if the board feels we need more time, we can request that. So I apologize, as I was going to get you something right away, and then I've been inundated with emails due to the large quantity of agenda items on this month's agenda, and then I've already come in for next month. So I did put together the start of a presentation for the council based upon the feedback that the board members and our former board members gave at the last meeting. So I'll show that to you tonight to get some feedback. I'm happy to email it. And then I did talk to the chair about what we might want to add to it. So Guy, do you want me to go ahead and show that?
Yep.
Okay. So last month, Suzanne, who's since done her term on the board, had the idea that instead of boring people with a whole list of projects, let's show some pictures. So what we have here is just kind of a snapshot. And so, sorry. Okay, it's not letting me go. Oh, there we go. Let's let me go full screen now. So the first one, we just have a screen that would kind of note the board members. Second one just kind of highlights the basic duties. You know, the project review board is the municipal reviewing authority for Freeport under subdivision. You know, you conduct site plan review and amendments, issue design review certificates, issue design certificates per the overlay district, and then just noting that you have the streamlined review process. So applicants that need multiple reviews, they get it all at one time. And sorry, I'm just going quick because you guys know all this. So as the subject area, a lot of times we do stuff like we report in fiscal year. In this case, I thought it would be great to show what you've really looked at in the past year during the pandemic. So you've had 42 applications, which is a lot. You've been really busy. Some of them have had multiple reviews, and then some of them have had to come back to the board. So you might have had 42, but you know, a subdivision could have come back 3 or 4 times. And that's important, I think, for everyone to understand in the process. So
and we're on pace. We're on pace to break that record this year.
Probably.
Yeah.
Caroline, just on that, is it possible also to include like the past 5 years and the number of applications, you know, on a yearly basis? Because it might be really interesting to the council to see that number go up if in fact it does.
Yeah, and maybe note how many we've already seen so far this year.
Okay, so
And
sorry.
if you get me the numbers, I can do a graph for you real quick and get it back to you.
Okay, so sorry, I'm gonna put notes in here as we go through because it's good to get.
Sorry, I know everybody wants to get going, but
Has this year
No, it's important to do this now. I think as a group, I think it helps to stimulate the conversation. We
have plenty of time tonight.
Through that agenda, so we're good.
Okay, so I have flagged in there 5-year history of the number of applications. Todd will make a graph.
Has this year been an outlier? Are you getting way more applications than normal?
It sure feels like it. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks. I'd have to compare the actual number. It feels like we've been busier. I think definitely there's been a real diversity in the applications the board has seen this year, or really like the past 2 years. But I think Todd's graph is a great idea just to compare the numbers for the past 5 years. So Alexis, I'll have better data at the next meeting and we'll show you that graph.
I guess I'm just surprised knowing what's happened in the cost of materials and construction over the last year that we would have an increase in applications. But I guess it's chicken or the egg, like all those constructions, why those prices are up. So it's, you know, I was just surprised.
Yeah, It's been interesting. Like when the pandemic first hit, I think we all thought we'd sit around and be bored and have nothing to do. But instead, the project review board started meeting twice a month because, as everyone transitioned to Zoom and got used to it, they did have an abundance of applications. And I must say that anyone that they had tabled or that got tabled from that initial March meeting, everybody's went forward and all the projects came back. So it's been pretty interesting, to think what we thought would happen and what has actually happened. And we can continue to have a steady stream of inquiries. And like I said, I already have 4 things in for next month, and there's still, a week till applications are due. So sorry, I just wanted to make that note. I'll go back to screen share for you. And if I'm going too fast, just please let me know. Can you see? You can't see the full screen on that end, can you? Can you read this? Okay. So then the first slide really, it gets into design review, and these are meant to really have conversation go along with them. So here I kind of gave a snapshot of things you look at. And so just so they really understand what comes before you. So here we just have doors, planters, lights, siding, color, new building, fences. This is supposed to represent a sign, outdoor.
It's frozen now for me. Can anybody else see that next slide? Or
No, I'm not seeing it either.
okay. Yeah, we're stuck on the March to March.
Oh, okay. Here, let me. What do you guys see now? Sorry.
Same slide, the March slide.
March to March.
Maybe you have to save it first.
Yeah, let me save it. Okay, let me try this again. Let me open it so you don't all have to see my messy desktop. Then I'll screen share. Now what can you guys see? Oh, there, now can you see it?
Yeah, we're on slide 1. Yeah, now they're changing.
All right, so here's Todd. No, I won't make any more notes. Okay, so this screen here is really just to kind of highlight what kind of applications come before you, because I feel like maybe there's some mystery that of all the things that people come before you to see. Forward, here's your windows. So that's what this screen is just showing. And then the next slide actually shows of the 42 applications. These are just snapshots of all the different projects you've been involved in. And so, the thought talking to Guy was that, he or Adam, who will probably do a majority of the talking for the board, can kind of highlight and go into some detail, but this just gives a snapshot of all the things you guys have weighed in on. It doesn't go into all the details of each application, but all the stuff that, you've kind of had a say in. Subdivisions, sorry, I have not clipped the plans. I think there's like 5 subdivisions that the thought here is that would show the plan so they could see the diversity. So here you might see something like commercial subdivision at the end of Stonewood, 144 unit subdivision, and then some minor residential stuff. So the goal is that the council could see the diversity of the subdivision applications that you guys have looked at. And then we get to site plan. These are the site plans that you've weighed in on in the past period of that past year. So then the thought from here was to add a couple slides. One to kind of know, the Divine Capital project was one of the biggest projects we've ever seen. And, some of the comments or challenges you faced with that project, we heard a lot from abutters. We've heard some stuff about notice. We talked about sidewalks in the commercial districts. And again, this was a larger subdivision, but yet had all the same standards. The next slide could be a snapshot of those projects that you've looked at that are on Route 1 South. And, that would tie into some of the things that you've outlined there as, the kind of overlap of that section 527 with some other standards. I would say we struggle with, overhead doors on and off, even though the standard's been changed. The broadness or lack of detail in the pedestrian path. And then if anyone else had other things to note regarding Route 1 South and 527, we could put that. And then lastly, I think, you know, design review and the overlay, and that's something I think that would be good to get a little feedback. You know, we should definitely share that the board had an inventory done of the A and B buildings, because that's data that we're sitting on. I think we could note some of the work you did with planning board and FEDC. I think I'd really love to hear, you know, what the board thinks are good things to flag. So again, the intent would be that any slides would kind of flag stuff, but really that there'd be substantial conversation behind it. Does anyone have thoughts? Do you like the picture approach that Suzanne suggested, or like us looking for feedback from the board?
I do. I like the picture format. I think, though it's a little tricky, that we should try to think about a dollar value as well. You know, some of these are small design review things where we're talking about, you know, a couple $1,000s worth of windows, but, you know, the commercial subdivision projects are big. The apartments are a large project. There's also plenty of large projects in there that really speak to the economic activity in town that comes through our board.
I like the way it's presented.
I have a question. Is the purpose to educate the council on what you've been doing, or do they already know what the group does?
They should know, but there's so many boards and committees. And so I think it's really just to flag to them, you know, the diversity of projects this board has looked at in the past year. And the board feels like there's some challenges with the ordinances. And so they really want to get some discussion just to flag them, because there's a lot of other discussions happening all at one time about different things. So they really wanted to share some of their thoughts based upon the experiences over the past year or two.
And don't forget, there's also been a lot of turnover on the board too, on the town council.
In the council, right, exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's important to keep in mind. And then with each turnover, there's an adjustment of who's the chair, who's the vice chair. So, you know, all of that changes, and that changes perspectives of the members too.
And this town is fairly unique with a project review board. I mean, most towns and cities, that all flows through the planning board. So I'm sure there's other towns in the country that are like this, but most just have a planning board. So, you know, they may not know where the division of labor is, if you will.
I think one thing that would make it more understandable as someone coming from the outside who's new to this is a slide, or at least speaking points when you've got like the different lights up and the different fences, about what the board is taking into account as they make those decisions. Like, does it fit with what our town image? Does it fit with what I heard tonight? Does it fit with other signage in the area? Do the materials and vision of what somebody wants to do hold true to the town of Freeport? But something that takes kind of those, you know, how you guys are asking questions and what you're thinking about, maybe something that makes that a little more relatable.
The problem is we only have a half an hour, and that you could spend an hour just doing one of those slides and the questions that are asked. The part of this education is because we have some pretty convoluted planning documents, and to go into depth with all of that would be more time than what we have. And we're trying to do something different. This board hasn't been before the council for as long as I've been on the board. And we're trying to give them a snapshot of our impact on town, because I don't think that they do totally understand what we do and the planning documents that we use. I have a couple comments. I think for 527 materials have been an ongoing discussion, and that was some of the update of building materials that are used, and also landscaping. Those have improved, but those were challenges that we had. I think it's important that we show what we have done in the last, not just 1 year. I don't think 1 year is enough of a snapshot. So I like the idea of going back, because we did have a lot on Route 1 for a while, and I think it's important to show that. You know, this is an education. This isn't just I mean, it has to be a more of an impact, I think. Than what I think it's great. I love the pictures and I love all that. I think we need to show a little more. Because I'm afraid they're going to see fences and flower pots, and that's, well,
I think
they're going to go away, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, if it ends up being Guy and I that are kind of doing more of the talking just for time constraints, I think we're overviewing those slides and kind of giving a presentation. And then I think we need a last slide that has the bullet points of, the issues that we see and that we feel that need to be addressed by either rewritten ordinances or updated zoning or whatever it might be. So I think, there's kind of a last slide that has some of those bullets, Geraldine, and we try, like Alexa said, try to keep it interesting and tell them what we're looking at, but move through that as a summary. And of course I can ask questions, but kind of leave some Q&A time at the end.
So, I think that's exactly right. Like overview at the beginning, and then kind of get into maybe 3 or 4 projects that were sort of sticky, and here are some of the issues that were raised, and then get into that bullet point list, like you said, Adam, with sort of the pressing issues before the board. But yeah, I just want to make it relatable. I mean, you're exactly right.
One thing too is since I'm also on the Coastal Waters Committee and the Commission and the Harisiki Yacht Club, for example, was an item. So it's not just the planning board that there's some overlap. It's also the Coastal Waters Commission too. And from talking to the chair on that, he sees that those projects are getting much more complex and may end up more and more over on this side. So just how that happens,
I think an undercurrent here is getting the message to the council that the work we're doing is important, complicated work, and that we are not being obstructionist, flat out not being obstructionist. I think somehow word got to the council through the FEDC or somebody that we were causing problems. I don't know that we've ever denied a project. And I spoke to a council in a social setting. I spoke to a council and I said, it is flat out wrong to think that we are delaying projects. And I do business in many other towns in this area. And I honestly think that we are as cooperative as they come, largely because of the work that Carolyn does on the front end, getting applicants prepared for that. And if you get an opportunity to drill into this at all, Adam and Guy, I think a great example of where we could use some support was on this issue of public notice. For that to have gone to the council and us not to have known it was coming up and then to be denied, I think perhaps they didn't understand this is a service to the community. And it was embarrassing for us when members of the community on a project as large as that 141 unit apartment building, members of Freeport residents stand up and say, we didn't know this was coming. I think the council ought to understand that.
Yeah, and that's definitely, one of my points is that project is a perfect example of, and the commercial subdivision where, the Ford place is now, I can't remember what that was called, but that those things had already either gone through council and or the planning board and nobody knew anything about them. And then they get to us and that's when the public turns out. And a lot of the things they complain about, and maybe rightly so, are things that at our level, we can't do anything about. The project is before us. Any deals or rezoning or anything that happened in any of those were already done and they were following an ordinance. And that's what our board does, is make sure they follow the ordinances. We're not here to change ordinances. So the public notice also needs to extend back up the chain, not just when it gets to us, so that those folks that were concerned about some of those things were at the right point in the process making their points.
Yeah, so Ford, I apologize because I should have sent you guys the council agenda so you knew they were talking about public notice. That being said, they weren't against public notice. They just thought the method of using another newspaper was going to be outdated fairly quickly. And so there was discussion that, it's if the board felt like there's public notice that's needed, we could do that through rules of order, which when you have a short agenda, you'll see some potential amendments to the rules of order. But I think hearing you guys talk, it's really important for them to hear that you're right. It's not just at your phase in the process, but you are hearing that all along throughout the entire process of a project, people don't know. So you're taking action like 2 years after it started and people are saying they still don't know. And so I think that was kind of Guy's point of flagging, you know, the 144 or the big project is like, you got a lot of those comments with that project. And so I think that was one of the things to kind of flag there for discussion to better understand some of the things that you guys are hearing.
And if you want, I can share my screen. I seem to be the one that sends the emails to Caroline that catalogs some things.
Hold on, let me give you, yeah, I think you can, Adam.
I think I'm already in there, yeah.
Okay.
So if we go.
Yeah, Adam, we signed you up to talk. I just couldn't fit all your words on a slide.
Oh, well, now I got to open system preferences to share my screen.
While you're doing that, Adam, one council member that I talked to is trying to, he seemed to know that there are problems with public being aware of projects, and I think he's trying some different approaches. One being maybe Facebook, on the Freeport Facebook page, do more to get out information and some other ways of getting to people. So I don't know if anything will come of that, but I think there's at least one trying to get more information out to the public.
All right, you can tell that I'm using my Mac at this, and I use my other computer all day. It works. This is not set up to screen share on Zoom, apparently.
So one comment while Adam's looking, how do you guys want to address the overlay issue? You thinking a bullet, a pretty map?
A map's always good. It's a visual.
Yeah. Didn't you make one for a previous working session?
Yeah, there is a map that shows like the different overlays, and maybe that could be like its own slide. I don't know. I mean, it's hard. We don't want to overwhelm with too many slides either.
Yeah, but that's one of the important issues, especially, you know, we're facing this vision plan. I mean, that's, to me, I mean, I thought we got 40 minutes or 45.
We can request more.
You can request. I just wasn't sure. So until we figured out exactly what it was going to consist of, I said we want at least a half an hour, no less.
No, I know I'm always Debbie Downer here, but we can't just sugarcoat everything, right? I mean, we have to have some reality in this conversation about what's going on with our planning documents and how they need to be fixed. And also the big impact of a comp plan and the effectiveness of a really good comp plan. That is something that's not being discussed townwide. And I think it's I think it's frustrating. It affects us. It affects our board. And I think that there should be some impression made to the council how important it is that we be looking at that now and you know, making a good comprehensive plan that has some depth and, you know, teeth to it. So yes, I think those things are very important.
And Geraldine, and too, along those lines, not something that's necessarily focused on the downtown area.
No, this is townwide. I'm talking.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I just want to emphasize that you know, the exercises that we're going through right now seem to be focused on even a subset of downtown.
Yes, right, exactly. Yeah, no, it's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, the amount of projects we've seen on Route 1 South in, I mean, just the last year, but the 5 years I've been on have been a lot. And Caroline, I just emailed you that list because Zoom and my Mac do not agree right now, but.
Okay, let's see. What did you email me? Okay, so sorry, I'm looking at your dates here.
Yeah, no, this was prepared a while ago, pre-pandemic, and it never happened.
Okay,
so they're pretty much the same notes, but
that's helpful.
Yeah, so those topics are what I had for topics, and the process part is really kind of, sort of speaks to the vision plan part, but I don't think we need to have that on a slide. We can just talk to that if we get into that discussion.
Yeah, I think the comp plan is something good to mention. There is a line item in the comp plan. I think they're considering allocating $75,000 for the planning board. We already have 25. So if that's approved, it would bring up give the planning board $100,000 in this fiscal year. And then I think there's another allocation of 25 or 50 in the subsequent fiscal year. But I think that, that's definitely something relevant. Okay, so Adam, I will look this over and kind of incorporate this into bullets. So are you guys, Adam, were you thinking we'll have one more slide that will identify, or were you thinking we would kind of highlight some of the issues like Route 1 South, large subdivisions? What did you envision?
I don't know, I'm thinking we go through that presentation you have, Caroline, to give an overview, and then we have a slide at the end with these, with topics, these and whatever else we have, to kind of talk about what the issues are that we see and that, we essentially would need help with. I mean, we're not going to change an entire ordinance without, the council, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's good. Just, there's a lot of stuff happening. There's a comp plan on the horizon. There's the downtown visioning. We're kind of waiting for an early action plan. And so, I did talk to a counselor and, said, oh, and the project review board's going to flag some stuff that, they feel like could be looked at or examined. And some of it could be now and tie into the vision. And then some of it, might be bigger and tie into the comp plan. So I think there's a lot of things. And, I think all you can do is flag these things as like, hey, we noticed this, you might want to consider it. And so I think that's what you're essentially doing here without overwhelming them, because it is a lot of information to take in, especially at the end of a meeting.
And I think one of the key points, to Ford's point, is that we're a quasi-judicial board, so we make decisions based on laws. And if applicants feel frustrated, I would say most of the time it's because they need to meet the ordinance. And, my view of my duty on this board is that we're here to uphold the ordinances. We didn't write them, but that's what we're, pledged to do. So, making someone follow the ordinance may not please them, but we're not we're not obstructing anyone from doing anything that's not in the ordinance. It's just that some people either don't want to follow the ordinance, or we have some poor ordinances that maybe shouldn't be written that way, but that's the way they are.
But I think that's part of the education conversation, because I've said this a lot too, is a lot of things are done in silos in Freeport. And if someone would ask us once in a while how we might use an ordinance, and how it's applied, they're looking at it as an ordinance, right? They're looking at it, maybe like someone looks at a floor plan, but they never look at the elevation. I mean, they're not looking at it in a way of how it would be applied. I mean, I have a concern about this new 45-foot limit on multi or mixed use buildings in town. I'm curious how that's going to happen, how we're going to look at these when they come before us. I'm worried about the height. I'm worried about shadows and wind tunnels, and anybody that's been in a place where there's two buildings like 45 foot next to each other, those are things, but like those conversations never managed to come to the project review board, or it's all done in these little pieces. And as we have witnessed at the planning board, and some of us were at the planning board when that 144 unit project first went to them to change the zoning, and there were like very few questions, like Zippo questions, and no members of the public asking questions. I have to say I was quite shocked how little input went into that whole zoning change. But boy, when it came before us and it went to council, Then it came before us and wow, we got blasted, right? So I don't know if there's enough awareness. I think when we had our workshop with the planning board, there seemed to be a little more awareness when we had the conversation that what they do impacts us, but I'm not sure if the council gets that.
Yeah, I mean, just to your point, Geraldine, that about building heights, that would be in direct conflict with design review ordinance,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think it's just, it's ripe for conflict until they start sort of addressing, all the issues within these overlays.
Well, the solution to everything, it seems, has just been to overlay more districts or carve out more, instead of rethink holistically what we should be doing. It's, well, let's carve out this parking lot and, call it something else. And that's not really the best way to go.
I mean, that's why I keep saying it's this very piecemeal approach and it's very reactionary. Something happens, someone wants to do something. So let's change the zoning without looking at how these things work together. And that's where the groups in town are working together. So we just keep getting more dysfunction and more dysfunction. And it's concerning because I don't think we're going to get the development that we want. And we keep making this excuse that it's, we're holding back development, but these layers of convoluted planning documents are what's holding back development. And no one quite seems to get that part. Anyway, and I wasn't going to talk tonight, darn it.
It's in the minutes. Sharon, did you get that?
Yeah, right. Sorry. That's all I gotta say.
So I think we have stuff to flag, and in regards to height, there was discussion about impacts, and there was discussion that it's a number that's changing, and design review is not changing, and it is going to come into play. And someone can come in with a 45-foot building, but based upon the site, they would still have to show that it meets scale. And if you have a one-story structure on either side, that could be tough. But so
we get to be the heavy though. I mean, we have to be the person that, in some places they'll require setbacks on that top floor.
Right, exactly.
And especially like with historic design, there's a lot of setback type elements that you can do to make it look to fit in. But then that comes to us. And then we have people saying that we want to design the building. Well, we don't, but we want a good design. And we don't have the design standards that help us kind of evolve that for the applicant.
Right,
So
there's no design guidelines. Yeah.
That's where the shortcomings are.
So is there anything that we haven't talked about tonight that we missed for things we want to flag as far as a bullet goes, or do we feel like we still really have them? And again, I'm happy to send a draft, as long as people reach out to me directly and don't communicate via email to one another.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to keep working with you, Caroline, on this, and Adam too, since I think you and I will be the ones presenting.
Yeah, and I sort of feel like we need a bullet for the vision plan, and not that we're trying to get in the middle of the vision plan, but just to make sure that I certainly hope their planning consultant has advised them that it's great to have a vision, but it might not be legally allowed by the ordinances that are on the books, depending on what comes out of that process. So, it's whether that's rezoning or rewriting an ordinance or whatever, that they may get a vision that is not actionable.
I suspect, and I have shared as recent as today, that I expect we'll get a vision and I'll get heartburn. And I'll say, that's great, but we can talk about doing some of those things once we go to the planning board and amend the zoning ordinance, and then amend the design review. So I fully expect that that's going to happen. But I think to, just flat out say it might be good, because, you say that stuff in one-on-one, but, you can't, like I said to someone, I'm like, you just can't throw out a bench in Freeport, based upon the standards we have in place today. And I don't know that everyone realizes that. which was kind of the point of that first design review slide. And actually, maybe I should put a bench on there because I think that's something we're going to hear. People want more seating. So yeah, I think that's good to flag, Adam. But again, I feel like we can't give super great constructive feedback on that without knowing what those early action steps are. It's hard. We can
Exactly. If it's have more farmers markets, great. That should probably work. But if it's, you know, the more housing downtown is an awesome idea. And it seems 90% of the people that you talk to support that. But where is that legal right now? And if we're going to change stuff, how are we going to change it holistically to make sure that, you know, our town works, not just that somebody's able to build, you know, 200 apartments in the center of town on a parking lot.
That'll be a fun one to approve, right?
Other comments that anyone has to share? Bullet?
I don't have any comments for the council, but I did want to say to Linda and Alexis that you are your first night is about the longest agenda we've had, and then we've had this discussion that kind of replays the last 4 or 5 years. And if your mind is spinning, I'm sure you can call any of us for some context.
It's shorter than I thought it would be tonight.
Yeah, my goal is to keep things moving, especially when I see an agenda that's that long. I think.
Yeah, that was long.
Yeah, you never know, I suppose, how it's going to go.
You want a motion to adjourn?
If everyone's done talking about this, I think Caroline, you and I will keep talking, Adam as well, about the presentation. I'd still like to maybe get it out to the board for feedback once more, maybe with some notes to accompany the slides so everybody can sort of weigh in. Just remember, don't reply all. Please reply just to Caroline, or else it's a meeting. That's for the new people.
Is this May 4th meeting? Is this just for the 3 of you, or are we all supposed to be there in support, or when is it and what is it? And
Caroline, what's the usual protocol, I guess, for boards coming before?
Like Geraldine said, you guys haven't done it in a long time.
Yeah.
Typically when there's board and committee workshop, it's the chair and or vice chair that will go. I mean, anyone can come. I definitely think knowing that it will be under other business on the end of a council agenda, it could be late past my bedtime, maybe others.
Definitely past mine.
But
yeah.
I think, you know, having people can definitely come and participate and watch, but having 2 speakers is going to be a lot easier than having 7. Knowing that I think you guys are pretty much all on the same page with things you have flagged thus far. But yeah, it's council meeting. Anyone can definitely, you know, come watch and be there if they have questions.
And I guess the only last thing, Caroline, I know you had a number of projects. I don't know if you actually have the list of projects, and if you send it to me, I could come up with some idea of dollar value, just at least as a, you know, notion to just throw that out there. Not that we'll put that on the slide.
I can easily give dollar value. You know, the other thing we could do is have a slide that just shows like the, you know, top 5 biggest assumed dollar value. I mean, it's hard to give that, but yeah, I have tons of spreadsheets I could send you.
Okay. Perfect.
Like 20 years worth, but whatever. And Ford, it was nice to see you so happy about Windows tonight.
You were very cooperative. Thank you all.
Okay.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, I will do a roll call vote. Berger.
Yes, certainly.
Blanchard, yes. Bond.
Yes.
Campanelli.
Yes.
Reiki.
Yes.
Troidel.
Yes.
Yankee.
Yes.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks,
Night.
everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks all. Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.